My name is Marisol, and at 59 years old, I never thought I would be sharing this story. After my husband died, I raised our son Jackson alone, working double shifts as a nurse to give him the best life possible. We were once inseparable until he met Eliza. When I received news of their engagement, I was overjoyed already, planning how to help them start their new life together. But on his wedding day, I faced the most painful rejection a mother could imagine. I silently left, but 2 hours later, all payments for the wedding were canceled. If you're watching this from your own home, go ahead and hit subscribe. Have you ever been rejected by someone you love? Let me know in the comments while I share how my son's wedding day became a turning point in our relationship. Life as a widowed nurse raising Jackson alone wasn't easy, but it was filled with love. I still remember the day my husband David was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer. Jackson was only 8 years old when we lost him just 6 months later. The night after the funeral, I held my son as he cried himself to sleep, promising him I would always be there. Those early years were a struggle financially. My nursing salary barely covered our mortgage and basic expenses, but I was determined to give Jackson the opportunities David and I had dreamed of for him. I picked up extra weekend shifts and night rotations, often working 70 hours a week. My colleagues would find me napping in the break room between shifts, but I never complained. Every extra dollar went straight into Jackson's college fund. Despite my exhaustion, I created little traditions to make our time together special. Saturday mornings were sacred. I would wake up early to make Jackson's favorite blueberry pancakes shaped like animals. He would giggle as I served up pancake elephants, giraffes, and occasionally, when the batter didn't cooperate, abstract pancake blobs that we pretended were exotic creatures. No matter how tired I was after a 12-hour shift, I never skipped our bedtime story ritual. Sometimes I would fall asleep mid-sentence, and Jackson would gently wake me to find out how the story ended. On particularly exhausting nights, he would pat my hand and say, "It's okay, Mom, you can finish tomorrow." His empathy at such a young age made my heart swell with pride. As Jackson grew into his teenage years, his natural intelligence and work ethic became apparent. He graduated as valedictorian of his high school class, and I sat in the audience with tears streaming down my face as he thanked me in his speech. To my mom, who worked countless hours to provide for us while still finding time to be both mother and father to me, this achievement is yours as much as mine. When Jackson received a partial scholarship to an Ivy League university, I knew we would still need additional funds. Without telling him, I took out a small loan against our home to cover the remaining tuition. Seeing him off at the airport for his freshman year was one of the hardest and proudest moments of my life. During his college years, we maintained our close relationship through weekly Sunday evening phone calls. He would excitedly tell me about his classes, new friends, and campus activities while I shared neighborhood gossip and updates about his high school friends. Those calls were the highlight of my week, though I carefully avoided mentioning any financial struggles, not wanting to add to his stress. Jackson graduated with honors in finance, and I saved for months to afford the plane ticket and a new dress for his graduation ceremony. His first job offer came from a prestigious firm in the city with a starting salary that made my eyes widen. Though he was finally earning good money, I continued to help him financially during those early career years, sending care packages of home-cooked meals, helping with his first month's rent, and co-signing the lease for his first apartment when his credit history wasn't established yet. What Jackson never knew was that behind my modest lifestyle, I had been meticulously planning our financial future. My friend Lucia, a financial advisor who I had once cared for during her hospitalization, helped me invest my savings wisely. I lived frugally, driving the same car for 15 years, shopping at discount stores, and rarely taking vacations. While my nursing colleagues upgraded their homes or retired to warmer climates, I stayed in our small house, gradually building a substantial nest egg. My dream wasn't to travel the world or buy luxury items for myself. I had one goal: to help Jackson start his married life without the financial stress that had marked so much of his childhood. I imagined gifting him and his future spouse a down payment on their first home, or covering their wedding expenses as my final act of motherly provision. I never told him about these savings, wanting it to be a wonderful surprise when the time was right. Jackson met Eliza at a corporate charity gala 4 years after he started at the firm. I remember how excited he sounded on the phone that night, describing her as brilliant and sophisticated. She was a marketing executive at a luxury brand company, and according to Jackson, they had spent the entire evening in deep conversation about business strategy, global travel, and fine wine, topics I knew little about. I was genuinely happy for him. At 32, he had dated occasionally, but never seemed to find someone who matched his ambition and intelligence. "She sounds wonderful, honey. When can I meet her?" I asked eagerly. "Soon, Mom. We're still getting to know each other," he replied. A month later, he called to invite me to dinner with them. I spent days anticipating this meeting, even buying a new blouse for the occasion. 2 hours before our reservation, Jackson texted to cancel, explaining that Eliza had an unexpected work emergency. I hid my disappointment, telling him it was no problem at all. This cancellation became the first in a pattern of changes I noticed in Jackson. Our weekly Sunday calls decreased to twice a month, then monthly. When he did call, our conversations were shorter, more superficial. He stopped asking about my friends or work, and instead filled the time with stories about exclusive restaurants he and Eliza had visited, or luxury weekend trips they had taken. His visits to my home, once frequent, became rare events that required weeks of advance planning. When he did visit, I noticed him looking around my modest living room with new eyes, commenting that I really should update the furniture, or questioning why I still had our old family photos displayed when the frames are so outdated. Jackson had always been proud of his hard-working middle-class upbringing. He used to tell his college friends stories about how we would turn the heat down and wear extra sweaters to save money, or how we celebrated special occasions at the local diner where the waitresses knew us by name. Now these same stories seemed to embarrass him. When he mentioned Eliza, which was frequently, he became defensive before I even responded. "You'll love her once you get to know her, Mom," he would insist, though I had never suggested otherwise. "She's just from a different background than us." 6 months into their relationship, I finally met Eliza at an upscale restaurant where the menu had no prices listed. She was strikingly beautiful, with perfect blonde hair, immaculate makeup, and a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her handshake was cool and brief, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Throughout dinner, Eliza's politeness had an edge to it. When I mentioned my nursing career, she responded, "That must be so hands-on. I could never do something so physical." When I complimented her earrings, she touched them lightly and said, "They're from a little shop in Paris. I doubt they have anything similar at the mall." Each comment felt like a subtle put-down, highlighting the differences in our worlds. Jackson sat uncomfortably silent during these exchanges, occasionally clearing his throat or quickly changing the subject. Only once did he mildly defend me when Eliza commented on my interesting choice of entree. "Mom has always had adventurous taste," he said, though the dish I ordered was hardly exotic. Despite the undercurrent of tension, I maintained a positive attitude, asking Eliza about her job and family, genuinely trying to find common ground. I learned that her father owned a successful chain of luxury hotels, and she had grown up traveling between their properties in different countries. Her mother was a former model who now ran a high-end charity foundation. Their world of private schools, summer homes, and family connections was entirely foreign to me. As our relationship developed, it became clear that Eliza viewed me as an embarrassing reminder of Jackson's humble roots. She would make comments like, "Jackson has come so far from where he started," or, "It's amazing how quickly someone can adapt to a better lifestyle." These remarks weren't just observations. They were judgments about my life and the home I had provided for my son. Under Eliza's influence, Jackson underwent a transformation. His casual, comfortable clothing was replaced by designer suits and expensive watches. The reliable sedan he had driven since college was traded for a luxury sports car that looked out of place in my neighborhood. When I expressed surprise at these changes, he dismissed my concerns. "I'm just growing up, Mom. This is who I am now." Most painfully, he began adopting Eliza's opinions and prejudices. When I suggested we visit our favorite local pizza place during one of his rare visits, he grimaced and said, "I don't really eat that kind of food anymore. Eliza says it's all chemicals and processed ingredients." The pizzeria had been our special place since he was a child, the owner still asking about "my boy who made it big." References to our shared past decreased, replaced by stories about Eliza's family holidays in the Hamptons or the celebrity chef who had catered her parents' anniversary party. When I would reminisce about his childhood achievements, the science fair project we stayed up all night finishing, or the time he scored the winning goal in his soccer game, he would smile uncomfortably and quickly change the subject, as if these memories were embarrassing rather than precious. The emotional distance grew between us, a chasm widening so gradually that I almost didn't notice until it was too vast to easily bridge. My son was still physically present during his occasional visits, but the connection we had shared throughout his life was fading. In its place was a polite, distant relationship that left me feeling like a casual acquaintance rather than the woman who had raised him alone for most of his life. I learned about Jackson and Eliza's engagement through a text message. Not a call, not a visit. Just a brief text with a photo of the ring, an enormous diamond that must have cost several months of his salary. She said yes, wedding planning begins. The impersonal nature of this announcement felt like a sharp pain in my chest. But I pushed aside my hurt feelings and immediately called him. The conversation was brief and distracted. "Can't talk long, Mom. We're at Eliza's parents' house for a celebration dinner." I could hear laughter and clinking glasses in the background. "We'll catch up soon," he promised, but the follow-up call never came. Wanting to contribute something meaningful to their engagement, I sent Jackson my mother's vintage sapphire earrings, a family heirloom that had been passed down for generations. They were elegant and valuable, but more importantly, they carried our family history. A week later, they were returned in a small package with a note from Eliza thanking me, but explaining they weren't really her style, and suggesting I keep them in the family. The implication that she didn't consider herself part of our family wasn't lost on me. In the early stages of wedding planning, Jackson included me in a conference call about potential venues. I listened as Eliza described lavish locations that sounded more like royal palaces than wedding venues. When they mentioned the estimated costs, I quietly offered to contribute financially. "I've been saving for your wedding day since you were little," I told Jackson, trying to keep my voice steady with excitement. There was a pause on the line. "You have savings for this?" Jackson sounded genuinely surprised. "That's unexpected, Mom. Let me and Eliza discuss it." After the call, I felt a mixture of hurt that he was so shocked by my offer and hope that this might bring me back into their planning process. Without waiting for their response, I scheduled a private meeting with the wedding planner they had mentioned, Veronica. She was a sleek, efficient woman with a tablet full of spreadsheets and a Bluetooth earpiece that occasionally lit up with calls she would silence. I explained my situation. A mother wanting to contribute substantially to her only son's wedding, preferably without a lot of fanfare. "I understand completely," Veronica assured me, showing more warmth than I had expected. "I work with many family situations. What kind of contribution were you thinking of?" When I named the amount, nearly all of my savings except what I needed for retirement, Veronica's professional composure slipped for just a moment, her eyebrows rising. "That would cover the venue catering and floral arrangements," she noted, tapping on her tablet. Would you like to be listed as the sponsor in the program? No, I said firmly. I don't want Jackson or Eliza to feel obligated or uncomfortable. This is my gift to them, no strings attached. Veronica nodded, typing notes into her tablet. Over the following weeks, I was gradually excluded from all wedding decisions. My calls to Jackson about plans went unreturned for days, then he would respond with vague, brief updates. Everything's handled, Mom. Eliza and her mother have it under control. I learned about their change of venue not from my son, but from social media, where Eliza had posted photos of an even more exclusive location than originally discussed. The invitation to their engagement party arrived in my mailbox just 3 days before the event, barely giving me time to request time off work and find an appropriate outfit. When I arrived at the upscale country club hosting the party, Eliza's mother greeted me with an air kiss and a quick once-over of my department store dress before directing me to the family table, which turned out to be a table at the far edge of the room shared with distant relatives and work colleagues, not with the bride and groom's immediate family. Throughout the evening, I watched Jackson circulate among Eliza's family friends, wealthy business people, a state senator, even a minor celebrity. He looked so handsome in his tailored suit, so grown up, but also somehow like a stranger. When he finally made his way to my table for a brief greeting, he introduced me to his future father-in-law with the words, "This is my mother, she's a nurse," as if my identity could be summed up in my occupation alone. Despite these painful interactions, I continued my quiet financial contributions. During another meeting with Veronica, I arranged to pay for the venue deposit, secured the catering company with my credit card, and approved the extensive floral arrangements Eliza had selected. Each time I reiterated my wish for anonymity, a decision Veronica respected while giving me subtle updates on the planning progress. I spent hours searching for the perfect wedding gift, eventually commissioning a beautiful handcrafted photo album with their initials engraved in silver. I included a few childhood photos of Jackson, but left most of the album empty for their wedding pictures and future memories together. It cost more than I could really afford, but I wanted them to have something special from me, something that might find a place in their new home together. As the wedding date approached, I realized with growing anxiety that my formal invitation had never arrived. 2 weeks before the ceremony, I called the wedding planner in confusion. "Veronica, I haven't received my invitation yet. Is there a problem with the mail or?" I let the question hang, not wanting to voice my deeper fear. There was a long pause. "Mrs. Torres, this is uncomfortable, but according to my final guest list, you're not, that is, your name isn't included." Her professional tone couldn't mask the awkwardness of the situation. "There must be a mistake," I insisted, my heart racing. "I'm the mother of the groom." "I understand, and I'm very sorry," Veronica replied carefully. "The final guest list was edited by Ms. Reynolds personally. I assumed you were aware. Eliza had removed me from the guest list. My own son's wedding, and I wasn't invited." The realization felt like a physical blow, leaving me breathless. After ending the call with Veronica, I sat in my living room for hours, surrounded by photos of Jackson growing up, trying to understand how we had reached this point. Eventually, I made my decision. Invitation or not, I was Jackson's mother. There had to be a misunderstanding, and I would handle it with grace. I would attend the wedding, find Jackson before the ceremony, and quietly sort things out. I couldn't imagine he truly intended to exclude me from one of the most important days of his life. The morning of Jackson's wedding day dawned bright and clear. I woke early after a restless night, my stomach knotted with anxiety. Standing before my closet, I carefully selected the navy blue dress I had purchased months ago, a conservative but elegant choice that had cost more than I usually spent on clothing. I wanted to look appropriate for the upscale venue without drawing attention to myself. I had scheduled an appointment at a local salon for my hair and makeup, another unusual expense I justified as necessary for the occasion. The stylist created a sophisticated updo, and the makeup artist applied just enough enhancement to look polished but natural. Looking in the mirror afterward, I hardly recognized the elegant woman staring back at me. a far cry from my usual practical ponytail and minimal makeup. Before leaving, I prepared a small gift bag with the photo album and a heartfelt card I had written and rewritten a dozen times, trying to express my love and joy without sounding possessive or presumptuous. To my son Jackson and his bride Eliza, it began. May your life together be filled with the same love and laughter you've brought into my life. I signed it simply, All my love, Mom. The drive to the wedding venue took nearly an hour, a sprawling luxury resort overlooking the ocean. My hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel as I rehearsed what I would say to Jackson when I found him. I practiced maintaining my composure, determined not to create a scene or embarrass him in any way. This was his day, and despite everything, I wanted it to be perfect for him. Arriving at the resort's grand entrance, I followed signs for the Reynolds-Torres wedding to a separate building with manicured gardens and a fountain. A security guard and coordinator stood at the entrance, checking names against a tablet. My heart pounded as I approached. "Good afternoon," I said with as much confidence as I could muster. "Marisol Torres, mother of the groom." The coordinator scrolled through her list, then frowned slightly. "I'm sorry I don't see your name here, Ms. Torres." "There must be a mistake," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm Jackson Torres's mother." The coordinator exchanged an uncomfortable glance with the security guard. "Let me double-check with the wedding planner. Would you mind waiting here for a moment?" She stepped away to make a call, leaving me standing awkwardly at the entrance as other guests arrived, presented their invitations, and were warmly welcomed inside. A few older guests looked at me curiously, and I recognized Jackson's godfather, who approached with a surprised smile. "Marisol, how lovely to see you," he said, kissing my cheek. "I was just telling Margaret how much Jackson looks like David today. The same proud stance." Tears threatened at the mention of my late husband, but I blinked them away. "Is he nervous?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "A bit, I think, but that's normal. We just saw him in the groom's suite." He lowered his voice. "Between us, I think he's marrying above his station, but don't tell anyone I said that." He winked and moved on with his wife, leaving me even more determined to find my way inside. As I waited, I noticed Eliza's mother across the lobby directing staff about floral arrangements. She saw me and paused, her expression cooling visibly. Instead of approaching, she made a quick call on her cell phone, her eyes never leaving me. A moment later, the wedding coordinator returned, looking even more uncomfortable. "Ms. Torres, I've confirmed that you're not on our guest list. Perhaps there was a miscommunication." "I need to speak with my son," I replied firmly. "Could you please let Jackson know I'm here?" After another tense exchange, the coordinator reluctantly agreed to inform the groom of my presence. I was led to a small anteroom off the main lobby to wait, clutching my gift bag and trying to ignore the pitying glances from staff members passing by. 10 minutes later, the door opened. Jackson stood there in his tuxedo, looking handsome and grown up, but his expression was strained, almost pained. My heart leapt at the sight of him, my son, on his wedding day, but the joy quickly faded as I registered his discomfort. Behind him, partially visible in the hallway, stood Eliza in a white silk robe over what appeared to be her wedding dress, watching the scene unfold with narrowed eyes. "Mom?" Jackson said, his voice tight. "What are you doing here?" I rose, still clutching my gift. "I came for your wedding, honey. I think there was some confusion with the invitations." He closed the door behind him, lowering his voice. "There was no confusion, Mom. You weren't on the guest list." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean, I'm your mother?" Jackson ran a hand through his carefully styled hair, a gesture so familiar from his childhood when he was stressed. "Look, this is awkward. Eliza and I decided, well, we felt it would be better if you weren't here today." "Better?" I echoed, my voice barely audible. "How could your mother not being at your wedding be better?" He looked at the floor, then the wall, anywhere but at me. "Eliza's family has certain expectations. Her father is hosting Senator's business associates. It's important for our future that everything is. He hesitated, searching for the right word. Appropriate. And I'm not appropriate. The hurt was giving way to anger now, a slow burn in my chest. Jackson finally met my eyes, and what I saw there was worse than anger or embarrassment. It was pity, mixed with something like shame. Mom, you know I love you, but this is about fitting in with Eliza's family, their world. We're building connections today that will shape our entire future. The door opened slightly, and Eliza's face appeared. Jackson, the photographer, is waiting, she said coldly, her eyes flicking dismissively over me. Jackson nodded, then turned back to me with a resolved expression. I'm sorry, but you weren't invited. You need to go away now. I stood frozen, the gift bag dangling from my fingers. Behind Jackson, I caught Eliza's satisfied expression before she pulled him away, whispering something that made him straighten his shoulders. The wedding coordinator reappeared, clearly having been waiting nearby. Can I escort you to your car, Ms. Torres? She asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak. With as much dignity as I could gather, I followed her through a side exit to avoid the arriving guests. Every step felt like walking through deep water, my legs heavy and unresponsive. The bright sunshine outside seemed a mockery of the darkness I felt inside. As the coordinator left me at my car with a sympathetic pat on my arm, I finally allowed the tears to fall. I sat in the driver's seat, unable to start the engine, my mind replaying Jackson's words over and over. You weren't invited. You need to go away. 25 years of sacrifices of love, of putting his needs before my own. And in the end, I was an embarrassment to be hidden away. The son I had raised alone, had given everything for, had just rejected me on what should have been one of the happiest days we shared. With trembling hands, I placed the gift bag on the passenger seat and finally started the car. As I drove away from the venue, I caught a last glimpse in my rearview mirror of the place where my son was getting married without his mother present. It looked like something from a fairy tale, beautiful and perfect, and completely unreal. The drive home passed in a blur of tears and disjointed thoughts. Traffic lights, other cars, the familiar landmarks of my neighborhood, all seemed distant and unimportant compared to the storm of emotions inside me. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my eyes were swollen from crying, and my carefully applied makeup was streaked down my face. Inside my quiet house, the contrast between the lavish wedding venue and my modest home struck me forcefully. This was the home where I had raised Jackson, where every corner held memories of our life together. His childhood artwork still hung in frames in the hallway. The growth marks on the kitchen doorframe recorded his journey from a small boy to a young man taller than his mother. The worn spot on the living room carpet marked where he had practiced juggling for a fifth-grade talent show, determined to master the skill. A notification sound from my phone pulled me from my memories. It was an automatic message from the wedding planner system. Final payment for Reynolds Torres wedding due today. Please confirm transfer of funds. I stared at the message, a strange calm suddenly replacing my emotional turmoil. In the midst of my pain, this mundane reminder about money felt almost absurdly out of place. Yet it forced me to consider the situation with new clarity. For hours, I sat in my favorite armchair, weighing my options and examining my feelings. My first instinct, born from years of maternal sacrifice, was to forgive Jackson, to make excuses for his behavior. He was under pressure from Eliza and her family. He wasn't thinking clearly on his stressful wedding day. He didn't really mean to hurt me so deeply. But beneath these rationalizations, I recognized a pattern of disrespect that had been building since Eliza entered his life. The canceled dinners, the critical comments about my home and lifestyle, the decreasing communication, the returned family heirloom, and now the ultimate rejection. being turned away from his wedding despite being the primary financial contributor. As the afternoon light shifted across my living room floor, I remembered a promise I had made to myself after David died. Sitting alone after the funeral, terrified of raising Jackson by myself, but determined to be strong for him, I had vowed that I would always treat myself with the same care and respect I showed others. "You matter too, Marisol," David had often told me when I would neglect my own needs for his or Jackson's. In the years of single motherhood that followed, I had sometimes forgotten that promise in the daily struggle to provide for my son. The memory of David brought another thought. Just before he died, weak from chemotherapy, but still lucid, he had taken my hand and made me promise something. "Don't let Jackson forget where he came from," he'd whispered. "And don't let anyone, not even our son, make you feel small." With these memories strengthening my resolve, I picked up my phone and called Veronica, the wedding planner. She answered immediately, her voice professional but cautious. "Veronica, this is Marisol Torres." "Mrs. Torres, I'm so sorry about what happened earlier. These family situations can be so difficult, and I cut her off gently. "I've made a decision about the wedding payments." There was a pause. "The final transfers, I just sent you the notification." "I won't be making them," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I'm canceling all payments effective immediately." "Canceling?" Veronica's professional composure cracked. "Mrs. Torres, the wedding is underway. The venue has been secured, the caterers are preparing food right now, the florists have delivered everything." "I understand," I replied. "But as I was clearly informed today, I am not part of this wedding. Therefore, I am no longer financially responsible for it." "But the contracts, the deposits." "This will cause significant problems," she sputtered. "That's unfortunate," I said. "However, I was removed from the guest list by the bride and explicitly told to leave by my son. I think anyone would agree that this voids any moral obligation on my part." After a moment of stunned silence, Veronica asked, "What should I tell the couple and the bride's parents?" "The truth," I answered simply. "That the person who was funding most of the wedding was uninvited from attending. I'm sure they'll understand the consequence of that decision." After ending the call, I contacted my bank to stop all pending transfers and payments related to the wedding. Then I called my friend Lucia, the financial advisor who had helped me build my savings over the years. "I'd like to redirect the wedding funds," I explained after telling her what had happened. "There's a nonprofit that supports single mothers pursuing nursing degrees. Can we set up a donation in David's memory?" "Of course," Lucia replied warmly. "Marisol, I'm so sorry about Jackson. Are you okay?" "I will be," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "For now, I'm turning off my phone and taking care of myself tonight." True to my word, I powered down my phone and drew myself a hot bath, adding the expensive lavender bath oil I usually saved for special occasions. This, I decided, was a special occasion, the day I reclaimed my self-respect. As I soaked in the fragrant water, I allowed myself to remember happier times with Jackson from his first steps to his college graduation. The memories brought tears, but they were gentler now, touched with nostalgia rather than raw pain. After my bath, I sat at my small writing desk and penned a letter to Jackson. I wanted him to understand my actions came from a place of self-respect, not vengeance. "I have always loved you unconditionally," I wrote, "but I cannot allow that love to be used as a reason to treat me with disrespect. Today taught me that sometimes loving someone means standing up for yourself, even when it's painful." I sealed the letter in an envelope, knowing I would give it to him when the time was right. As I prepared for bed, exhausted from the emotional day, I felt an unexpected sense of peace settling over me. For the first time in years, perhaps since Jackson had left for college, I was putting myself first. The thought brought both sadness and a quiet strength. Whatever happened tomorrow, I would face it with the dignity that had carried me through widowhood, single motherhood, and now this painful rejection from my only child. While I was finding a moment of peace at home, chaos was erupting at the wedding reception. I learned the details later from Jackson's godfather, who called me the following day, concerned about my absence. According to him, everything proceeded normally through the ceremony and the first hour of the reception. Jackson and Eliza exchanged vows under an elaborate floral arch, danced their first dance as husband and wife, and cut the 5-tier cake amid applause and champagne toasts. Then, as the main course was about to be served, the venue manager approached the head table with a serious expression. He quietly informed Eliza's father that there was a payment situation that required immediate attention. When they stepped into a private room, the manager explained that all payments had been canceled, including those for the venue catering bar service and flowers. Without immediate alternative payment, they would be forced to end the reception. Eliza's father, initially furious and insisting there must be a mistake, was shocked to learn that I had been the primary financial sponsor of the wedding. "That's impossible," he reportedly said. "We were told Jackson was covering everything himself." The revelation quickly spread through the wedding party, creating confusion and anger. Eliza, upon learning what had happened, reportedly threw her bouquet across the room and accused Jackson of lying to her about his financial situation. "You told me you were paying for our wedding," she screamed, heedless of the guests who could hear the commotion. "How could you let your mother handle this? How could you not tell me?" Jackson, caught between his bride's fury and his in-laws' cold disappointment, frantically tried to resolve the situation. He offered his own credit cards, which were nowhere near sufficient to cover the outstanding balance. Eliza's father eventually stepped in to save face, paying the remainder with barely concealed anger, but the damage was done. The joyful atmosphere of the reception had evaporated, replaced by tense whispers and uncomfortable glances. Many guests, sensing the discord, made early exits. The carefully planned evening events, the father-daughter dance, the bouquet toss, the grand sparkler send-off, were either rushed through or abandoned entirely. What should have been a celebration lasting until midnight ended abruptly at 9 o'clock, with the bride and groom leaving separately, Eliza departing with her parents, and Jackson left to apologize to the remaining guests. While all this was happening, my phone sat powered off on my bedside table. When I finally turned it on the next morning, it immediately began buzzing with notifications. 14 missed calls from Jackson. 23 text messages ranging from confusion to anger to pleading. Voicemails that I couldn't bring myself to listen to yet. I sipped my morning coffee, reading through his texts chronologically, watching his emotional journey unfold. "Mom, what happened with the wedding payments?" "The venue says you canceled everything. Call me ASAP." "Are you serious right now? On my wedding day?" "Answer your phone. This is a disaster." Eliza is furious. Her parents had to pay for everything last minute. "How could you do this to me?" The tone shifted in the later messages. "Mom, please call me. I need to understand why you did this. I just found out you were paying for everything. Why didn't you tell me? Eliza's not speaking to me. We're not going on our honeymoon. Please call." "I'm so confused right now. I thought you were just helping a little bit." And finally, sent at 3:47 a.m. "Mom, I'm sorry. I had no idea. Please call me when you're ready." Instead of responding immediately, I took the day for further reflection. I went for a long walk in the park, where I used to take Jackson to play. I called a few close friends who knew about the situation and listened to their supportive words. I even visited David's grave, sitting beside the headstone, and imagining what advice he might give me now. By evening, I felt centered enough to begin sorting through Jackson's childhood photos. I created 2 piles, one to keep for myself, preserving the memories of the sweet boy who had been my whole world, and another to give to him, remembering Eliza's disdain for his embarrassing past, but hoping someday he might want them. The next phase of my life was taking shape in my mind. I had been so focused on Jackson for so long that I had neglected my own dreams and interests. Perhaps it was time to take that cooking class I had always wanted to try, or to use some of my savings for the trip to Spain I had put off for years. The thought brought a small smile to my face. Not happiness exactly, but the prospect of it. A week after the wedding, I finally felt ready for a conversation with Jackson. I texted him a simple message, "I'm ready to talk when you are." His response was immediate. "Can I come over tonight?" When he arrived at my door that evening, I hardly recognized him. Gone was the polished, confident man in the wedding tuxedo. In his place stood an exhausted, disheveled version of my son with dark circles under his eyes and wrinkled clothing. He looked younger, somehow vulnerable, in a way I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking on the single syllable. I stepped back to let him in, maintaining a calm exterior, despite the emotions swirling inside me. We sat in the living room, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us until Jackson finally spoke. "You paid for the entire wedding," he stated flatly, "and you never told me." "Would it have made a difference?" I asked quietly. His face flushed with anger. "Of course it would have. How could you cancel everything without warning? Do you know how humiliating that was? Eliza's family had to step in at the last minute. Her father thinks I'm some kind of con man now." I let him vent his frustration, noting how his first concern was his embarrassment, not the pain he had caused me. When he finally ran out of steam, I spoke calmly. "Jackson, you told me to my face that I wasn't welcome at your wedding. You watched me walk away in tears. Did you really think there would be no consequences for that choice?" "I was under pressure," he protested. "Eliza's family, her friends, they're different from us. They have expectations." "Different from us," I repeated. "You mean better than us, better than me." He looked away, unable to deny it. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did hurt me, Jackson. Deeply. I spent 25 years putting you first, working extra shifts to pay for your education, supporting your career, celebrating your successes. I saved for years to help give you this wedding a good start to your marriage. And in return, you treated me like something shameful, something to hide away." Tears filled his eyes. "I don't know what happened to me," he whispered. "When I'm with Eliza with her family, I become someone else, someone I don't always recognize or like." "That's something you need to figure out," I said, not unkindly. "But I want you to understand something. I didn't cancel the payments to punish you. I did it because I finally realized that I deserve basic respect even from my own son, especially from my own son." Our conversation continued late into the night, moving gradually from anger to painful honesty. Jackson revealed that his relationship with Eliza was already strained before the wedding, her constant criticism of his background creating insecurities he had never felt before. The wedding fiasco had brought these tensions to a breaking point. "She gave me an ultimatum last night," he admitted. "Said I had to choose between her and you, that we could only save our marriage if I cut ties with my interfering mother." I felt a chill at these words. "What did you tell her?" Jackson looked at me directly for the first time that evening. "I told her I wouldn't choose, that you're my mother and that won't change." She stormed out, went to stay with her parents. As he left that night, our relationship remained fragile. a delicate thing that would need time and care to heal. I didn't offer easy forgiveness, nor did he ask for it. Instead, we agreed to give each other space while keeping lines of communication open. In the days that followed, Jackson texted occasionally with brief updates. Eliza had hired a lawyer. They were discussing separation. He had moved into a hotel. Each message was straightforward, without blame or emotional manipulation. I responded in kind, offering neither advice nor consolation, simply acknowledging his messages. We were finding a new way to communicate, more distant than before, but perhaps more honest. Meanwhile, I focused on myself. I enrolled in a weekend cooking course, reconnected with nursing colleagues I had lost touch with, and started volunteering at a community center teaching English to new immigrants. Each small step toward an independent life brought its own satisfaction, a reminder that I was more than just Jackson's mother. 6 months after the wedding day, my doorbell rang unexpectedly on a Saturday morning. I opened it to find Jackson standing there with a paper bag from our old favorite bakery and an uncertain expression. "I was hoping we could talk," he said. "I brought those cinnamon rolls you used to like." I smiled slightly, remembering how we used to share these treats on lazy weekend mornings. "Come in," I said, stepping aside to let him enter. We sat at the kitchen table, the familiar scent of cinnamon and sugar between us. Jackson looked better than he had during our last meeting, rested calmer though still carrying a weight of sadness in his eyes. "Eliza and I are getting divorced," he said after a moment. "The papers were finalized yesterday." I nodded, unsurprised by the news after the updates he had shared. "Are you okay?" "Not really," he admitted with a rueful smile. "But I will be. That's not why I came, though." He took a deep breath. "I came to apologize properly. What I did to you at the wedding, there's no excuse for it. None. I've spent months trying to understand how I could have treated the person who gave me everything so terribly." Tears filled his eyes, and for a moment I glimpsed my little boy in the man sitting across from me. I was so caught up in Eliza's world, in trying to be the person she wanted me to be, that I lost sight of who I actually am. Who you raised me to be. "And who is that?" I asked softly. "Someone who knows that character matters more than status. Someone who values loyalty and sacrifice. Someone who doesn't forget where he came from." He reached across the table, hesitantly taking my hand. "I forgot all of that for a while, and I hurt you terribly. I am so deeply sorry, Mom." The sincerity in his voice touched something in my heart that had been closed off since the wedding day. Not completely healed, but open enough for forgiveness to begin. "Thank you for saying that," I replied, squeezing his hand. "It means a lot to hear." We spent the morning talking more openly than we had in years. Jackson shared how his relationship with Eliza had gradually eroded his self-confidence and connections to his past. She would make these little comments about how I needed to polish myself, hide my ordinary background. At first, I thought she was helping me fit into her world, but eventually I realized she was ashamed of who I really was. The wedding disaster had forced him to confront the person he had become. When her father paid for everything, she expected me to be grateful to apologize for the embarrassment. All she cared about was how it looked to her friends, not how I felt, or how terribly we had treated you. In the months of separation that followed, Jackson had reconnected with old friends from before Eliza, people who knew and liked him for himself. He had sought therapy to understand how he had drifted so far from his values. He had even taken a small apartment in a neighborhood similar to the one he grew up in, finding comfort in the familiar sights and sounds of a working-class community. "I don't know if you can ever fully forgive me," he said as he prepared to leave. "But I hope you'll give me the chance to be your son again, to show you the respect and love you deserve." I felt tears well in my eyes. "I never stopped loving you, Jackson. Even at my angriest, I never stopped. That's what made it hurt so much." He nodded, understanding. Can I come over next Saturday? Maybe we could start doing breakfast again sometimes? I'd like that, I replied, a warmth spreading through me at the thought of reclaiming this simple tradition. The healing between us didn't happen overnight. We rebuilt our relationship slowly, deliberately, with a new honesty that acknowledged both the love we shared and the pain we had caused each other. Our Saturday breakfasts became a regular event, sometimes quiet and reflective, other times filled with conversation about his work or my new activities. During those months after the wedding, I had embarked on my own journey of growth and self-discovery. The money I had originally saved for Jackson's wedding was partially redirected to the Single Mothers Scholarship Fund, but I also used some for myself. I took a 2-week trip to Spain, walking the streets of Barcelona and sitting in sidewalk cafes, experiencing the independence of travel I had never allowed myself before. I started volunteering with a support group for single parents, sharing the hard-earned wisdom from my years of raising Jackson alone. The gratitude in the eyes of young mothers struggling with the same challenges I had faced gave me a new sense of purpose. My experiences, even the painful ones, could help others navigate their own difficult paths. My relationship with Jackson evolved into something more balanced than before. He no longer put me on a pedestal of maternal sacrifice, nor did he take my support for granted. I in turn began to see him as a flawed adult, rather than either my perfect child or an ungrateful son. We were just two people with a deep, complex connection, learning how to love each other authentically. On my 60th birthday, Jackson surprised me with a small party at my home, inviting my closest friends and colleagues. As we shared cake and stories, I looked around at the life I had built. A life rich in meaningful relationships, purposeful work, and new experiences. The pain of the wedding rejection had faded, transformed into a pivotal moment that ultimately led to greater self-respect and a more honest relationship with my son. Later that evening, as Jackson was helping me clean up, he paused, leaning against the kitchen counter. You know what Eliza said to me after we separated? She said I would never find someone like her again. He smiled wryly. I told her I certainly hoped not. I laughed, recognizing the return of his natural humor that had been suppressed during his relationship with Eliza. And have you started dating again? I asked. Slowly, he admitted. But this time, I'm looking for someone who values all of me, including my wonderfully stubborn mother. Wonderfully stubborn? I raised an eyebrow. Wonderfully courageous. He corrected his expression, turning serious. What you did at the wedding, standing up for yourself like that, it taught me something important about love and respect. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept mistreatment, even from the people you love most. His words crystallized something I had been feeling throughout my journey of healing. Love without respect isn't really love at all. It's dependency, or habit, or fear. True love requires both compassion and courage. The compassion to forgive imperfections, and the courage to establish boundaries. As Jackson hugged me goodbye that night, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the difficult path we had traveled. Through pain and honesty, rejection and reconciliation, we had found our way to a truer, stronger connection than before. And I had found my way back to myself. Looking back now, almost 2 years after that fateful wedding day, I can see how much my life has transformed. The painful rejection I experienced became the catalyst for profound change, not just in my relationship with Jackson, but in how I view myself and my place in the world. The initial weeks after the wedding were the hardest. Each morning, I would wake up reliving the moment Jackson told me to leave the hurt so fresh, it felt physical. There were days when simply getting out of bed seemed an impossible task. But gradually, as I focused on rebuilding my life, the sharp edges of that pain began to soften. My healing journey wasn't linear. Some days brought unexpected triggers. A wedding announcement in the mail, a mother and son laughing together at the grocery store, a familiar song from Jackson's childhood playing on the radio. Each time I allowed myself to feel the sadness without drowning in it, acknowledging the loss while continuing to move forward. The support group for single parents became a significant part of my recovery. Every Wednesday evening, I would join a circle of mothers and fathers facing their own struggles. At first, I came to share my experiences and offer guidance, but I soon realized I was receiving as much healing as I was giving. Their stories of sacrifice, resilience, and unconditional love mirrored my own, creating a community of understanding that helped ease my isolation. Through this group, I met Daniela, a young mother of 2 boys working nights as a hospital aide while studying nursing during the day. Her determination reminded me of my younger self, and I found myself naturally mentoring her, helping with childcare during her exams, and sharing my professional knowledge. Watching her graduate with her nursing degree, her sons cheering loudly from the audience brought tears of joy and a deep sense of purpose. My relationship with Jackson continued to heal slowly but steadily. Our weekly breakfasts evolved from careful, sometimes awkward conversations to more natural interactions filled with genuine laughter and honest sharing. He settled into his post-divorce life, focusing on his career and gradually rebuilding his confidence. 6 months after his birthday party, Jackson called with unexpected news. "Mom, I've been offered a position in Chicago. It's a great opportunity, but I'm torn about leaving you." "Take it," I said without hesitation. "This is your time to explore and grow." "But we've just started to rebuild everything," he protested. "I don't want to lose that." "Jackson," I said gently, "our relationship isn't dependent on Saturday breakfasts anymore. We've built something stronger than physical proximity. Take the job. We'll make it work." And we did. Our weekly breakfasts became monthly video calls. He would show me around his new apartment, and I would update him on my latest volunteer projects or cooking class disasters. When he visited for holidays, our time together had a new quality of appreciation and intentionality that had been missing before. As for me, I discovered a freedom I had never allowed myself to experience. After decades of defining myself primarily as Jackson's mother, I began exploring who Marisol Torres was beyond that identity. I took art classes, joined a hiking group, and even went on a few dates with a kind widower I met through volunteering, though we ultimately decided to remain friends. The money I had saved for Jackson's wedding, my nest egg that had been meant for his future, was redirected toward a fuller life for myself and toward helping others. The scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing nursing degrees became my passion project, and seeing the first recipient graduate brought a satisfaction deeper than I could have imagined. At last year's holiday gathering, while helping me prepare dinner in my kitchen, Jackson asked, "Do you ever regret what happened at the wedding? Canceling the payments?" I considered the question carefully as I chopped vegetables. "I regret the hurt we both experienced," I finally replied. "But I don't regret standing up for myself. That moment changed everything. Painful as it was necessary." He nodded thoughtfully. "I think about it sometimes, how differently things might have turned out if I had just... We can't live in what ifs," I said, touching his arm gently. "We can only learn from what actually happened." The truth is, as painful as that wedding day rejection was, it forced both of us to confront uncomfortable truths. For Jackson, it was recognizing how far he had strayed from his authentic self in pursuit of status and approval. For me, it was acknowledging that my love for my son had sometimes come at the expense of my own self-respect. The lesson I carry forward is this: loving someone deeply doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. True love, whether between parent and child, friends, or partners, must include respect. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do both for yourself and for the other person. My journey from that painful rejection to where I am today has taught me that our greatest wounds can become our most profound teachers. By honoring my own worth, I actually strengthened the bond with my son, creating a relationship based on mutual respect rather than dependency or obligation. Today, as I volunteer with new single mothers, I share this hard-won wisdom: love yourself as fiercely as you love your children. Show them through your actions that self-respect is not negotiable. The gift of this example will serve them better in life than any sacrifice that diminishes your spirit. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between keeping peace and standing up for yourself? What did you learn from that experience? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more reflections from this journey called life. And remember, it's never too late to reclaim your self-worth. Sometimes the most courageous act of love is setting a boundary. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to honor both your heart and your dignity in all your relationships.